So next up we have one more panel before the break. And this is obviously a huge issue at the minute, ad blocking. You may have read about it somewhere or seen it. It seems to be everywhere. So we have a great panel here today to talk about this very subject because it affects everybody in this room one way or the other, publisher, agency, marketer, and obviously the users as well. So this panel is going to be moderated by Jim Edwards, who's the founding editor of Business Insider in the UK and Europe. Also on the panel we have Ben Barocas, Ian Curtis, Dan Smith, and Roy Carthy. And a round of applause for everybody, please. To make your way to the stage, that'd be great. Jim.
All right. Thank you all very much for coming, and thank you for inviting me and us here. I'm actually going to be quite interested in this panel because I'm sort of... Come on, it's not going that badly. So I'm supposed to be moderating this, but of course we've got people from all sides of what is essentially a big fight. So I'm hoping it won't dissolve into too much of an argument. We've got Roy Carthy from Shine, who, of course, is on the ad blocking side. Ben Barocas from SourcePoint, who's more sort of on the sort of publisher ad tech side. Dan Smith from Rag Lawrence, lawyer.
On the side of anyone who'll pay me.
And Ian Curtis from The Telegraph, who's sort of on my side with Business Insider as a publisher who's suffering from ad blocking. So, actually, why don't we start with you, Ian? What has been the Telegraph's experience of ad blocking users so far?
So it's a tricky one at the moment because we're still trying to survey the landscape of ad blocking. I mean, in terms of our own users, we're still going off the benchmarks of the industry and trying to find out what the best way to approach the issue is. You know, guys like Ben with SourcePoint and PageFair offering us, you know, solutions that we'd re-inject the ads or, you know, find some kind of circumvention around the initial ad blocking problem. But then, you know, what's the right thing for consumers? They're the ones that have elected to use an ad blocker on our site. So we need to get to the actual reasoning of why that's been the case.
What do you think of what the Washington Post did recently, where they're just refusing to serve pages to people with ad blockers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty hard-line tactic. I'd be interested to see how much they actually know about why the user's using ad blockers in the first instance. It's pretty good in that, you know, they're not losing their content and they're providing an actual mechanism to drive more data into their system. But, you know, is that the right thing to do? Is that the right method to go down?
So I can tell you from sort of our experience at Business Insider is that, one, our management is just like really, really angry about the audience that uses ad blockers. You know, sort of off the record, we kind of regard it as theft. There's a sort of minority viewpoint within the company that basically says, you know, look, if the pages we're serving load so slowly, and it's clearly because of the ad tech, if they load so slowly, then can you really blame readers? And perhaps we should make our pages perform better. But inside the Telegraph, sort of, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is the level of anger here?
It really depends on who you speak to. I mean, you know, if you go to the guys who are seeing 15% of their ad inventory drop off, the anger is full-scale red. If you actually delve into the issues around why that ad blocker is in place in the first instance, then, you know, it's exactly as you're saying. Is there something we could be doing better to mean their audience don't use ad blockers in the first place?
Yeah.
And, you know, that it kind of ends up us feeling a bit like a jilted ex, in that, you know, we're pleading with a customer to say, like, why have you come using an ad blocker? Why don't you want to see our ads? Why don't you want to support our content? You know, what could we do better for you? And they're the questions we need to solve, because while ad blocking is a huge issue now, cutting off revenue, it's not going to go away through any kind of smart tech implementations we put in place. Where there's a will, there's a way, and we've seen entire industries change around, music and streaming and, the TV audience. So, while we have to stem the flow of revenue that's being lost, we have to look into the future as well and see how do we fix it.
Okay, Roy, let's turn to you. You're stealing from us.
All right, call the thief right there out of the get-go. No, I'm not stealing from you. In fact, I am protecting your readership, which clearly wants defending and is unable to do it on its own. They have been standing, and this isn't new to anyone in the room, with very, very smart people on the other side, developing very sophisticated technologies that have been targeting, tracking, and literally abusing them for years. The situation is not very complicated to understand. What we are doing
What's an example of abuse?
What is, abuse is user experience. Abuse is data. Abuse is battery. Abuse is tracking. Abuse is privacy. It's a very easy.
The mere act of tracking is abuse.
I'm sorry?
The mere act of tracking is abuse?
Apparently 200 million people believe so.
I mean, so in the UK, for instance, all websites have to carry this banner that says we're using cookies to track you. Mm-hmm. If you don't like it, go to Wikipedia.
Right.
There's full disclosure there. This isn't a mystery.
No. So that's a very simplistic claim that there is full disclosure and it's very well understood. So first of all, people, normal people are not the people that sit in this room that can understand or grasp the magnitude of this tracking and what cookies actually mean. Cookie sounds very cute. Targeting sounds not so cute. We are here to provide technology that helps consumers gain the choice to block ads. Apparently, many of them believe they do want that right, and we are here to serve them specifically.
Do you think it really is an issue about privacy, or is it about speed? Because I can tell you, I've obviously used an ad blocker, just so I know what we're talking about here. And I actually think all publishers should spend a little bit of time using an ad blocker to surf the web, because obviously the performance of the web improves massively when you use an ad blocker. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I personally don't care about being tracked by ads, but if I can get my pages to load in a snap, is it about privacy or is it about performance?
Let me turn the question, if you don't mind. Do you think users who are using ad blocking are there to steal your content? Is that why they're using ad blocking? To steal our content? To steal the slides?
I presume they want the site to load faster.
So they're not trying to steal, they're not thieves.
Right. I don't think they're paranoid about Business Insider tracking them.
No, certainly.
I mean, to give the ad community some credit, I think most consumers these days are pretty sophisticated, and they know that what tracking is done anonymously and in aggregate. And the privacy fear is that until you hand over your credit card data, you haven't actually lost much privacy.
Oh, I disagree. I think, first of all, the 200 million folks that are using ad blocking, you could claim are somewhat sophisticated. I would argue the couple of billion that are not using ad blocking have no idea what you're talking about in terms of what is tracking, how does it work, that it even exists. We began, let me kind of take it to a different spot. Shine was founded as an antivirus company. The guys had an idea how to reinvent the antivirus for the mobile age. Great, sophisticated stuff, malware, horror. What we discovered was that here there was this opportunity in which we could retool our technology to control ads, because in fact it's ad tech and adware that are impacting the user experience in a negative way.
Okay, let's ask Ben for presumably the opposite view there.
So what I believe is I'm not anti-ad blocker, nor am I sort of anti-speed. What I believe is that users need the choice in which they compensate the publisher for the content that they consume. And I think for too long, the exchange of value has been implicit instead of explicit. And I think we're entering into an era which the user demands choice, and the publisher needs to provide the choice to the user. that they can have their content consumption subsidized by advertisers if they so choose, or they can choose to pay a subscription fee in which to load it faster. But what users cannot choose is to not compensate publishers for the content that they consume. Content has real cost. We are all here in order to help publishers provide content to people. It is a bedrock of democracy, the information that we all help to enable and distribute around the world in real time. And advertising subsidizes a great deal of that. And so if we can help users understand and make transparent that transaction between content creator and content consumer, we'll all be in a better place.
Okay, from a tech point of view, does the tech solve the argument? I mean, eventually the ad blockers or the anti-ad blockers, one of them will get better tech and the other guys will go out of business. Am I just way too simplistic?
Yeah, I think you're way too simplistic. Certainly, there is this cat and mouse game. And, there's a war going on, and we have decided to play a part in that war. And we are very aggressive in enabling the circumvention of ad block. But at the end of the day, this is a user choice, and it's a publisher choice. It's not an ad tech choice. And the publisher has to decide whether or not they allow for the consumption of content without compensation. And that can only happen for so long before the publisher, like a Business Insider, goes out of business.
Or the Washington Post.
Or charges a subscription fee. And so our job is really to make that as low friction a choice as is absolutely possible, to allow people to consume the kind of ads, the format of ads, and the frequency of ads that make sense for them. And if they want no ads, then that's fine too, but they must pay. And so if that exchange of value is transparent, then we live in a better world where we're solving for the ecosystem, where the publisher generates the revenue that they need, where the user gets the experience that they want, and that the advertiser is able to.
What do you think of the
subsidize.
Washington Post, what they're doing right now? I can tell you that is like being very closely watched right now. If the Washington Post succeeds, by sort of maintaining most of its audience, but maintaining 100% of the revenue, and basically, if you're wearing an ad blocker, you don't get to see the Post anymore. That's very closely watched. Do you think they'll win?
For sure. I mean, we'll help them win.
Okay. All right, Dan. So as I said at the beginning, there's some publishers regard this as theft. Legally, what's the situation here?
It's tricky.
Is this a billable hour?
No, this is all for free. Legal action is a possible part of the solution, but I think people have to understand the limitations on what might be achieved through legal action against ad blockers. Rushing to court is not going to make people want to see banner ads. It's not going to deal with the demand for ad blockers. And the law doesn't exist to preserve business models which may become outdated in the face of new threats. That's not what it's there for. So putting together a case against ad blocking is not straightforward. And that's what we've seen, not in the UK so far. There's been no legal action in the UK, but it's certainly what we've seen in Germany. So if you look at the cases that have been put together in Germany, I as a lawyer look at those and think, this is the publisher throwing everything at the ad blockers and seeing what will stick. Just coming up with every possible argument they can, however tenuous. And Germany is quite a favourable territory to take action in, because Germany has, for a long time, regulated the behaviour of competitor businesses. They love to regulate in Germany.
Yeah.
And so they have this law called, they have unfair competition law, basically. And that's the main plank which the German publishers have used in their legal arguments against the ad blockers. But the courts have come back, and universally across Germany, all lower tier courts so far, but 3 different courts have come back and said, no, unfair competition doesn't come into play here because you are not competitors. Ad blockers and publishers are not competing. And they've gone on to say, this is not the ad blockers unfairly hindering publishers' business. They're not using an unfair trading practice to try and push publishers out of business. This is consumers making a free choice to use ad blocking software.
Okay, why is it not a bit more like the sort of Napster situation? Because the music industry and the TV and movie industry they've dealt pretty well with theft of copyrighted material. Is it not akin to that?
It's a very different context. So copyright law exists, it's become more complex in the digital age, but it exists to prevent the unauthorized reproduction of copyright works. So if I illegally download, or Napster facilitate my illegal download of music, we are reproducing a copyright work in an unauthorized fashion. The record companies haven't allowed us to do that. So that is obvious copyright infringement. So legal action there, not so very difficult. Is that what's happening here, though? It would be a very technical argument to say that somehow the ad blocker is reproducing a copyright work. They're not doing that at all. They're preventing the display of a copyright work.
Well, if you wanted to be really pedantic about it, and I'm asking out of genuine interest here because I don't know the answer, but could you not argue that if a consumer downloads a website, essentially they are downloading the equivalent of a copy for their own personal use?
Yeah.
But if they're editing it as they do so,
yeah,
they are in some way damaging my license as the rights holder.
Yeah, and you can construct that argument. So all I'm saying is that it's not as obvious as the case against Napster. There is a copyright infringement argument, and it can be run. And they ran it in Germany, and they lost on that as well. And
because because it's not explicit, because the transaction is not explicit. If in fact the transaction was explicit and the user said, I want advertising to subsidize my content consumption, then I think we have a case against ad blockers in terms of they're not allowing what the user explicitly demanded, right? Now, it could be the ad blockers say, oh, well, we've made it easy to whitelist for a particular site. Okay, so what is that barrier to ease? How easy is it to get to those settings? How easy is it to say on a particular site-by-site basis that I want to allow monetization through advertising versus some others? But that's why I think that we have to get to this point where users opt in to advertising as opposed to going to subscription.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you here. There couldn't be anything more transparent about how the way web media works. I mean, we give you news, there are ads at the side of it. It's not a mystery what's going on here.
It's certainly a mystery. I think for many
30 years now.
Many users around the world, they pay $80, 80 pounds, 80 euros to their cable company or their ISP, and they say, we've paid for the internet. As a user, they feel like they've already paid, right? They're not thinking about, oh, this is access and this is content. They don't care, right? Most users have no ill will towards publishers and no ill will usually to ads versus some people are kind of sensitive about retargeting and forced interstitials. But in general, people really don't care. And if the ads go away, they don't even notice that they go away. Okay. Right?
The IAB UK's July research had only 44% of people confessing to understanding how the free internet worked. 44% of people. Now, they may have been being disingenuous, but that's 56% of people who were saying they didn't understand the advertiser-funded business model. And within that 44%, how many of them perceive a moral distinction between ignoring the ads and blocking the ads? I'd hazard a guess that not many see there's a moral difference between those two activities.
I think the better argument on behalf of the ad blockers is why do you want to serve ads to people who don't want to see them? That's like ineffective, wasted, inefficient inventory. So you're therefore technically not losing anything. But Roy, it's just an argument.
I think you would say it's a terrible argument. At the end of the day,
Roy,
I'd love to see your CEO
running out of time.
Be happy to...
No, he'll probably fire me.
Correct.
Roy, can I bring you back back in on this because there's some discussion with wireless networks about sort of blocking ads at the wireless at the network level, which seems to me almost the opposite. Because then, what if I wanted to see the ads? Now I don't have the choice. Or am I misunderstanding this?
You misunderstand. We would be applying a service on the user's behalf and a request. We will simply be doing it much better than available solutions that exist for mobile at the moment.
Okay, but it would be a sort of one click per user.
That's a product issue. Don't
Okay,
concern
but it's-
yourself with the enabling. The fact that we can do it is the issue.
Okay, but if you've got a user who frequents one website that serves really terrible ads and they're like, you know what, I don't want the ads here, so they click that off. Now they're not going to get ads on my site either, and my site's obviously great.
Well,
Their choice on that site has now deprived me of revenue and choice on my site.
we haven't had that particular request come up, and our customers have a gauging of their customers as well. But really, when somebody enables an ad blocker, that's a very clear statement, and I'm not sure I understand what there is to misunderstand. No means no, and a service. Well, let me.
It's not quite parallel, but go on.
Well, when a consumer makes a very blunt, very clear statement that enables an ad blocker, and you have a company whose business is to circumvent it, which I'm confused as to how that gives choice, because the user has actually had the choice and has made the statement. That is slightly confusing to me.
It's very clear, from the perspective of an ad blocker, they're actually forcing themselves on the publisher and disallowing a particular channel of revenue that is very important to them. And that choice should only be on the user. And many advertisements are very, very informative to the user in terms of choice. So I'll give you a couple of examples. For me, I very much like automotive magazines and content. And oftentimes I'll go and I'll read a review of one piece of kit, let's say an exhaust for my Audi. And they'll write that review and they'll talk about how good it is, and that's all well and good. But then I'll look at the advertisements and see 5 other options for that particular piece of kit, and I'll learn about those.
No, Ben, we understand how online
Additionally,
advertising works. The
sure.
issue is that somebody is saying we don't want it. Not that we get it. We really understand how
Which
it
is
works.
fine. They are able to say that they don't want it
here's-
as long as
if
the
you're wanting-
publisher is becoming compensated.
the
So whether or not they
then
want it
put a gate.
compensated...
Simply
through-
put a gate. Don't
for sure.
circumvent an ad blocker.
No, you can
Put a
certainly...
gate. Let's figure out how the Washington Post does.
I will do both. I will do both.
We don't need circumvention technology if it's a simple choice. Do you want to give the consumer a choice, or do you want to work for the publisher? Because right now, those two don't
Roy,
correlate.
you're comfortable with what the Washington Post is doing? Is that what you're saying?
I am neither comfortable or otherwise. It's not my business.
Come on. It's not,
I'm not
the
being
Post
paid for
has
their
done
comfort.
something really brave. They've said, if you're using an ad blocker,
And that's
that's
perfectly
great.
fine. And
It's
that's-
your
listen,
choice. We will
ultimately-
choose not to serve you news.
I think ultimately, the way first of all, just so you understand, we at Shine, me personally, we're not against advertising. We are against abusive advertising, and we are most specifically.
And who are you to make that choice?
Pro-consumer, no. Me, Roy Carter, me, Shine.
Regardless,
So,
you choose.
so the 27 employees of Shine and 200 million other folks, we've made the decision that it is abusive. It's very simple. No means no, Ben. I really don't understand what's unclear.
That's not your strongest argument. Roy.
I'm sorry?
Don't extort money and ask for
We don't extort. We also don't abuse consumers.
others do.
That's not my issue. I'm from Shine.
So, Roy, just on, I think what that gentleman is getting at is that another ad blocking company, I believe it's AdBlock
I don't
Plus.
speak on behalf of any other company.
I know you don't, but just let me finish the question.
Sure.
They do pay companies like Google and Yahoo to let ads go through their ad blocker. Does Shine do that?
No, Shine is a technology company. We provide our product, our technology, to carriers who choose to use it any which way they want. You can
Okay.
have that conversation with carriers.
So you will not be having that extortion debate the way ABP is?
It's not our business model.
Okay.
Our business is removing pollution from mobile devices.
All right.
That's what we do.
Let me move you then to the part of your argument that I think is going to be the strongest, which is the amount of mobile data bandwidth taken up by ads.
Yeah.
And a lot of consumers are still getting charged large monthly sums of money just for using their phones. How much of it is ads?
So good point. So last week we took a fairly big ad in the Financial Times globally, where we called upon the GSMA and and carriers themselves, of course, but for the GSMA to work with its membership to institute zero rating policies when it comes to mobile ad data, which means the following: we don't believe that consumers should be subsidizing billion-dollar ad tech businesses. That data belongs to them, and they shouldn't subsidize it. Certainly when they have no idea how much they use. As to your question, we've seen numbers anywhere, and it's a tricky question because it has to do with geographies, the amount of data plan, the size of your data plan, and the type
Roughly
of consumer.
ballpark, we're running out of time.
We've seen anywhere from 5 to 50% of data being used by ad tech. Interstitials and all variety of good times.
Okay. Ian, I've rather left you out, perhaps because you're furthest away.
We're contentious.
We're nearing the end, but thoughts, please.
It's, my biggest problem with the whole thing, and this is not necessarily to do with Shine, it's more to do with the acceptable advertising kind of manifesto that's out there, and how that's going to be set and how that's going to be set for the future. We need consensus from the industry, and we need consensus from a publisher point of view of what the strategy should be here. How do we approach this as a market? How do we approach this as essentially a unified front? I mean, how are we supposed to innovate our advertising stack when we're just all brushed with the same, we're all tarred with the same brush? It's really tricky. I mean, I don't have an answer for it, and I think that's the problem. We need some guidance on the issue in general.
Okay. Dan, last word. You've got 30 seconds.
I don't think it's the end from the legal perspective. So German courts, lowest tier, they're the only ones who've made a decision. I think there'll undoubtedly be appeals.
America more fruitful for lawyers on this field?
Well, there will always be lawyers who try to make out a case for something. For me, the primary, what publishers should really be looking to do is evolve their business models. Legal options might be part of the solution, but I don't think they can be the whole solution.
All right. On that note, we're out of time, but thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. That was a brilliant debate, I have to say. I really enjoyed that. I have to say, Roy, listen. It's like a little deer going into an angry cave of bears. And that's amazing what you did today. So round of applause, Roy. Good day. And Ben Baracus is the Mahatma Gandhi of ad techs. No, they're all good people. I love him. We all love each other. It works. Brilliant.